Welcome. Today we're going to go over the last three passes that I made on the car on the street for the first time on 28s and kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what we're changing and what it does and what we're doing. But I'm not going to try and make it too long. I'm not going to try and bore you to death, but just kind of an outline of what, because it's so hard on race or on, sorry, I can't remember my password and talk at the same time. But it's so hard on the nights when we're out with the car to try and slow down and go over the changes that we need to make or that we're going to make or what we think would happen or what we think it should do or it didn't do or whatever. So, kind of figure we would go over a few of those things after the fact, just kind of bring you into the fold a little bit of what's going on behind behind the curtain or whatever. But these are the first three passes that I made on 28s on the street. Um, Normally we'd go to the racetrack and shake something down. Sorry, sound guy was butting in there. Sounded. He was doing sound guy stuff. Normally we would go to the track and shake something down for the first few passes until we have an idea of what it's going to do and blah blah blah. But I've got thousands of laps on this car. I feel like, and I'm pretty good with just going out and seeing what it'll do on the street. Also, it saves a bunch of time. You don't have to load everything up to the racetrack and blah blah blah. So obviously, it's been a while since I've gone over the exact combo of my car. It's one of those things I kind of feel like everybody knows, but we do have a lot of new people. We got new people coming every day, and so it's just a quick reminder of what we're working on here. We're working on a 1970 Pontiac GTO with a traditional Pontiac engine in it. It's a Butler deal, 482 cubic inch, twin turbo. It's got precision 98 millimeter turbos. It's on methanol with a 3-speed Rossler, non lockup at the moment. It has a Circle D, one of their Pro Series recent converters, which is a big part of the combo now. Rest of the car is pretty normal, standard, really fast race car stuff. Tube chassis, Mark Williams rear end, based on a 9-inch Ford. It's got lamb brakes all the way around, kinetic shocks all the way around. It's about the best stuff I got anyway. So that's what we're talking about when we're going over this. This may not apply to your stuff, and to be honest, I only got three passes on these tires, so I'm not really an expert. This may not apply to anybody. It may not even apply to my, but just a reminder of what we got, what we're working with here. First pass on the 28s, I was a little conservative. You always feel like you got to be conservative. Just to kind of quickly run through what we did here, we went from the big 29.5, the Outlaw 29.5 tire, whatever, not the W, but the bigger Hoosier 29.5. Went from that tire to the 28 10.5, and it is a DO5 compound, but it is a stiff sidewall, and we stretched it onto about a 14-inch wheel. I can't really remember. It might be 15, but I think it's 14. But either way, we stretched it onto basically the same wheel we were running the 29.5 with. The point of that is just to stiffen the tire up. We've got enough horsepower that we can do whatever we want with the suspension, with the 4-link. So we can make the 4-link smash the tire. We can make the 4-link, put the weight of the car onto the tire. We can do it slow. We can do it fast. We've got enough horsepower and chassis that we can pretty much do just about whatever we want if we know what we're doing. And so we have found in the past that, if you can stiffen the tire up, it'll go faster. It won't wad up and unwad so much. So like that's the big fight with a bi-sply tire or slick is the wad and unwad. It's like people say it basketball the tire or whatever. You hear people say all this stuff. It's literally a rubber band. It's a basketball. So when you let go of the button and it wrinkles the sidewall, the wheel will get closer to the surface and the tire will wrinkle up unless you have some magical way of suspension and power application that you can keep that same ugly wrinkle and smash the whole run. It's gotta come back. So what it'll do is it'll wad the tire up, it'll smash, and then right when you're trying to apply the power and it's trying to rotate the weight over, it will unwad. So it's like you stretch it and then it snaps back. You'll see it about 0.4 on most no prep, legit no prep street type combos. You know, it'll wrap the tire up and then it'll take it off, and you can kind of see it a little bit in some of these data logs. So like this was the first run. Let's see if I can change the color here. Red is RPM, green is drive shaft. So obviously the smoother that line, you know, the less tire spin you have. Or if you really spin one fast, you can make it smooth, but it'll usually be smooth straight up and down. So, but what you can see is here, that drive shaft is constantly in oscillation. There's a collar on the drive shaft. There's a sensor on the rear end. It measures the drive shaft speed as you go down through there. And so what you're seeing is the drive shaft RPM go up and down, up and down, up and down. That's that oscillation that is just so hard to get rid of with a slick, especially on something that's not a really good surface. I mean, it is really good for street racing, but compared to, you know, a racetrack, it's still not anywhere near it. So what you'll have is you'll have the drive shaft be slow here, and then that oscillation starts because it wraps the tire up and then it has to unwad basically. So, and you'll see that, and then once it starts, you just can't get rid of it almost without just shoving a ton of power in it. It's hard to get rid of. But so that was on the first pass. The launch RPM there was 30. I need my notes. So they're right here. Launch RPM on that pass was 3,700 RPM. So that's the red line here. And what you got is, this is the rev limiter. This over here is idle. This is the first rev limiter, which is the 3-step. It was set at 4,100 RPM and 5 pounds of boost. So it's sitting on this. So if you turn on the boost, you can see that blue line is boost. So it's sitting on this 4,100 RPM 3-step rev limiter until it gets to 5.03 pounds of boost. Then it will drop down to the normal rev limiter, the 2-step rev limiter, which is set at 3,700. It didn't really hold the 5 pounds like I wanted it to, so it kind of dropped down to 4.2. And so it left a little lazy. It was, you know, it was pretty slow as far as what I wanted out of it. But as far as like it making the pass and going down, it was perfect. You know, the first pass, it was great. I was really happy with it. So when I looked at this and I saw what it was doing, I was like, well, we need to add some power down low. We need to get it to snap a little harder off the brake. And then, but when you look at the shock, we may not go that far today. I don't know. It's a lot to learn. You know, I don't know. We'll see. Basically, looking at these three things alone, you're looking at how do you make it faster. You would add launch RPM. That adds snap. That kind of wakes up the forelink if the forelink's not squatting like it's supposed to, or if you're an anti-squat guy, if it's not separating like it's supposed to. You add some RPM. That'll usually wake the forelink up a little bit off the button. And then you can add power. I usually try to keep the power about the same. I've got a boost curve that I like that's smooth. I've got a launch boost that'll go down multiple different surfaces. So yeah, will that surface hold more boost? Probably. But can I do it with timing and RPM that's easier to change in between street race roads? So if you get busted at this road, you got to go to this other road. Instead of trying to guess at what boost it's going to make, I can just lower RPM or take timing or whatever out of it to keep it there. So without changing the boost, first thing I want to do is when I see this is I'm going to add RPM, because you're looking at these incrementals is what I'm always looking at. So you're looking at like quarter second is the first one I look at usually. And drive shaft is about 129 RPM, which means barely turning. When the drive shaft is that low in the first quarter second, it's got to come back, and it comes back high. And that's what starts this oscillation. And so then if you roll over to, say, half a second, it was 840. So it's already on the upspin if you look at that drive shaft. See, it's half a second. It's weird how this will work out if you start using this or if you start paying attention. It's really weird how it works out. But these quarter, half, and 3/4 numbers, and even one really, but quarter and half a second into the run after trans brake release, you'll notice will be your lowest and your highest points in your drive shaft. It's just something about math and physics I don't understand, but those are the numbers you concentrate on. So if your number at a quarter is low, your number at a half is probably going to be a little high. If your number at, you know, and it's just going to keep that oscillation. When I was talking in the video about peaks and valleys, you know, that's what it's all about. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and bring this RPM up at the quarter-second mark, keep the RPM at a half because it was slow. If it was like spinning out of control or whatever, then I would say we're going to lower the RPM at a half. But we're just looking to fix the G meter in the first half to 1 second. And so the yellow line is the G meter, and it's got this real smooth rollover. So if you see the G meter is going up, but then it's just, you know, rainbowing out there. That's smooth, but it's not really fast. You really want the G meter to be up because you know, you don't have any surface after that. Once you let go of the button on a street race deal or legit no prep deal, every inch that you travel down the racetrack or every magnet on that collar on the drive shaft RPM, you know, every hundredth of a second of the run, the further you go, the less traction the road has. That's just the way it is. You know, you do a burnout in a puddle, there's going to be rubber on the start line. The further out you go, there's less rubber. You have less potential for traction and energy to be gained from the surface, friction. So what you do is you try and get the G meter up as high as you can, as quick as you can, because that's where you got the rubber, and you try and keep it up there. So we're going to try and add RPM. That was our first move. We're going to try and get the boost to do what we told it to do. It left at 4.2, 4.3. We'd really like that to be more like 5 because that's what we told it to do. The reason why it's not making the 5 is because we're bringing it from the 3-step to the 2-step a little too quick. After looking at this, on the next run, we're going to raise the 3-step RPM to 4,200 now instead of 4,100. Instead of stopping at or dropping at 5.03 pounds of boost, it's going to be 5.09. Very small changes, but yet you see how it makes a difference. We're going to run the 1-2 shift out a little bit, which is, you know, a little further than what this conversation is really about. But the reason is because you can kind of see here where it tried to make the shift, and then the G meter just fell off. And then it goes out there and it's kind of oscillating, and then it makes the 2-3, and the G meter falls off again. Just so this is what I'm guessing as the 2-3 shift. This over here is what I'm guessing is the 1-2 shift. Just judging by drive shaft RPM, and you know, you can come over here and I can turn on gear data and it'll tell me exactly where it was, but it's right around there, I promise you. We're gonna run the 1-2 out just a little further. It was at basically we're gonna run it out 0.2 of a second longer. We try and do everything on time. So we're gonna run the 1-2 out 0.2 or so, 2-3 out a little further. We're gonna run the 2-3 out a tenth further, maybe 100 RPM ish. So, and then we're going to take it back up there. Now, as far as timing and everything else goes, when you let go of the button, like say this is your timing line, and when you let go of the button, you know, you're going to let it roll out for just a second, and then you're going to drop timing out of it, and then you have a certain amount of time, you'll keep the timing out, and then you'll bring the timing back in, and then on with the run. This is basically what I changed. Everything out here, the car makes so much more power than what we're using. There's really no point in trying to do a whole bunch out here because we already got more boost in it than what we could probably use. So now we go to a really good road and everything's happy, then this leaves me an easy thing to change. Rather than trying to add boost, we're just going to try and pick up timing. But for now, we don't even worry about that. We're only looking at the first half of the run here because that's where the ET is. You know, that's what we're doing. So if this is on that first run, I pulled out 23 degrees of timing off the button, believe it or not. That's a healthy chunk of timing, especially for a distributor. Pulled out 23 degrees off the button and then brought it back into, you know, and ran it out the rest of the run. So what we're going to do is we're just going to clip this a little higher. So instead of bringing this all the way down to 23, we're going to go to like 20 and just see if it likes it more. The RPM is really what we're hoping makes the improvement. We're not trying to do a million things at once, but you know, but I can look at it and say, you know, it could definitely use a little timing here. It's not going to lose the tire too quick, but we got to be careful with that oscillation. That's where it gets you. Judging by that oscillation and the changes that we made, it needs a 4-link change. Going to the 28 tire, we had to raise the ride height because the car set with a 29 tire. You take 1.5 inches of ride height away, it's going to sit, you know, like this. So we had to raise the ride height a little bit. And then we took the weight out of the car. So we had 100 pounds of ballast in the back of the car with the 29.5 for the last race, which was chip seal. is where we were planning on being. So I don't think it needed that weight, but it was just one of those things when you're, it's easy to say what you think before you're headed to the race. And when you're headed to the race, you're like, I'm just going to do everything I know how to do. So for testing, though, on the 28, we took that out of the car. So taking the 100 pounds out of the car and raising the ride height for the 28-inch tire, now our 4-link, which was, like this, is now like this. So it just does not have the leverage to keep applying as it rolls down through there. So really needs a 4-link change, but we were bored. We just decided we were going to take the car out. It was going to be raining for a few days. So we were like, let's just take this thing out and see what it does on the 28s. Needs a 4-link change, but we're not going to change that right now. We're going to wait till we get back to the shop. After the first pass, we made those changes. Basically, we're raising the launch RPM. We're raising the 3-step RPM. We're running the shift out a little longer. We're adding a few degrees of timing in the drop there in the tire. So on the first run, we were at 9.3 PSI in the tire with 0 ballast. Tire pressure is very combo specific. Don't just go run out and try and put this tire pressure. Use what the tire wants. Do what the tire wants. Don't do what I tell you to do or what I'm doing. I've got a really wide wheel on a lightweight car. Makes a bunch of horsepower. I may not even end up at this pressure. I may end up with a bunch more or a bunch less. I don't know. We're just talking about the initial setup here. For the second run, we decided, after looking at the video and looking at the marks and data and everything, we're going to go down in tire pressure. We're at 9.3 the first run. We're going to go down to 9.1. We don't make big changes. That's just kind of what we do. We feel like we're going to make 40 licks on these tires at some point, and we can go 1 or 2 tenths of a PSI at a time. So we went down to 9.1 on the tire pressure, and we sent it. And it didn't like it. Not the tire pressure. I don't know that even affected it. But so we got a few things going on. Or this is my opinion anyway on why it may not have liked it. The launch RPM definitely helped with the G meter. The G meter's a little bit more straight up and down now here. Doesn't have quite the rollover, but then it's got all of this out here. What is that? I don't know. And then you can see it in the drive shaft. It's got more oscillation now. We've effectively made it worse. Not what you want to do. And as a result, it slowed down. Slowed down in 60 foot, slowed down in 330, which, pretty much you slow down in 60 foot, it kills basically the rest of the run. And this oscillation makes it to where you can't really add any power or whatever. But you can see the shifts look a little better out here, running them out a little further. So that helped, but it also, if you shift it when it's oscillating, it's just going to get worse, so we got a few things to work on. This is where the decision-making part comes into play, because anybody can just look at a screen and say, okay, it needs more, it needs less. It needs more, it needs less. This is the part where you have to figure out where and what kind of more and what kind of less. It also helped a little bit on our boost. So the first run, we were at like, 4.25 pounds of boost or something by the time it left, shooting for 5. Second run, we're at 4.75, 4.78. So we're getting there. It helped. Raising the RPM and the 3-step number before it dropped down, that helped. And the shifts look okay. So really, this is where you could look at this and say, oh man, we need to take power out of it because it got worse. But in reality, in my opinion anyway, and what the ET and data show is not putting more timing back in it at the same time. We raised the launch RPM, try and snap the 4-link, and then we left all that 23 degrees. We only put 2 or 3 in, so we're at 21 for whatever degrees. So it tried to leave harder, and then it started to wrinkle the tire, started to activate the 4-link, and then all that timing still came out, and it picks the tire up with the car. As the car noses back over, it picks the tire up. So, and you can see it didn't even make it to the 0.4 that it did before. Like it's even lower. It's about the same or lower than it was before, but it just takes off right after that. So we went from being at like 150 the first run at a quarter and 800 and something the second run or the first run at a half, to now we're 130 at a quarter and 1325 at a half. So we made it worse. And then it carries it. The oscillation is even worse the whole rest of the run, until it starts getting a little power. It starts to kind of go fast there, but then back to the bullshit basically. This is where you got to make the decision on based on experience. And, you know, my experience tells me we're testing. This is what I can change to fix this. I mean, you can even see in the RPM that it spun and then hooked so hard it brought the motor down with it. Like, that's not what you want. So what we're going to do is, seems crazy, I know, but we're going to raise the launch RPM again. Last run, this run here, we're at 4,200 on the 3-step and 5.09 psi. 2-step, we're at 3,850. We're going to go 4,300 on the 3-step, 5.11 psi. So hopefully bring that boost number up just a little bit before it drops down. And then the 2-step, instead of being at 3,850, we're going to be at 4,000. We're adding 150. Not something I would recommend normally. In this case, yeah, I felt it needed it. So we're going to raise launch RPM basically 150. We're going to go on the 1-2. It looks better out here on the 1-2 and on the 2-3. So we're going to move those out just a touch, about another tenth and a half. Maybe not on the 2-3. Judging by my notes, we didn't move the 2-3 at all. If I had another shot, I would move the 2-3. But if it goes faster, the 2-3 is going to happen earlier because it's based on time and RPM. So everything I do is drag racing, and it's time based. So it's time over distance. So I shift the car on time. I'll have an RPM that's a hysteresis of time. And so it'll say basically shift the 1-2 at 1.87 into the run and 6,500 RPM. It has to see both of those numbers to make the 1-2 shift. And I do the same thing for the 2-3. So that way, if it's faster, it can shift earlier because the RPM will happen earlier. So on this one, it actually waited to shift until after the time was way expired. The time was 1.87. It waited till after 2 seconds to shift because the RPM wasn't there because it was slower. Something to think about. So I know the 4-link's not right. And I know that if you just keep adding RPM, you're just going to piss it off worse. So what I did was I said, let's add the snap off the button and we'll add some power. We'll add 5 degrees of timing basically to that drop. So that valley, we're going to pick up 5 degrees there.
Take out 5 less.
Yeah, take out 5 less degrees of timing. So 23 before, and we went to 21.
2.
So it's what?
So that's 21.
So it's 21 minus 5. So it'd be like 16. So if this is 21 here, we're going to go to like 16. Yeah, we're not taking out as much timing as we were before. In my mind, the way I say it is I'm putting 5 degrees of timing in it, but I don't mean like in the map or in the whole run. I just mean in the drop. In that timing retard, I'm putting 5 degrees back in. So I'm not taking out as much. So it should make a substantial gain in power there. But in order to get it through this weird section here that you can see, where I just added RPM and power and it got worse, in order to get it through there, if I could just get it through there, it will be happier with more power. I know that. But the 4-link is just not where it needs to be. So in order to try and get it through there for tonight to see if we can, you know, get more data, make a better run, I'm going to turn on a transmission dump, an external dump valve. We've talked about it before on Jackie's cars, but just a quick overview of that is we're going to take transmission charge pressure away from the torque converter. We're just going to dump the converter circuit back into the pan basically, and with an orifice and a solenoid. So I'm going to turn that dump on at 0.15 at 30% duty cycle, like a nitro solenoid. And I'm going to hold it there for 0.5 and then I'm going to shut it off. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it to where the converter is not seeing this first ugly bit of that tire. So if we can make it to where the converter is going up smooth without all that, it will, because in reality it's the converter is, you know, before the drive shaft. So when I say that, I say things backwards sometimes, but we want the drive shaft not to see the converter trying to couple in the first half a second, basically. So we're going to let the converter flash up a little higher, hit it with a little more power to get the tire through that weird spot in the first half a second where the 4-link ain't doing shit. Once it gets through there, we're going to shut the dump, fill the converter back up, and it'll take off, is the theory anyway. And it'll already have the power in it, so it won't be behind. That's the theory. And you can look at converter charge pressure if you know what you're looking at, but you probably don't. I don't usually. So, but you can see on this run here, converter charge pressure on the trans brake is steady. Then when I let go of the trans brake, of course, the transmission pump is driven with RPM. So when the engine RPM goes up, converter charge pressure goes up. With that, it starts to roll the engine over, and that rips the tire up off the pavement. And then, but then you see the oscillation from the drive shaft, the tire spin hooking. You're seeing that in the converter charge pressure. So remember when I said it looked like it may have tried to get fast here? If you look, it was like it smoothed out there, and then it smoothed out again there. So converter charge pressure is really good to have if you know what you're looking at. Too much of anything is bad. Too much data could be bad, but if you know what you're looking at, you can usually use converter charge pressure to prove a point, a theory. Another big misconception is, I hear a lot of guys, a lot of OG racer guys and whatever, and carb-rated guys, guys that just don't know a lot about this stuff yet. I hear a lot of those guys say, well, you let the computer do everything, and you got all that computer, you got all that fuel injection, and you got all that data, and it does everything for you. And that's not the case at all, as you can see. Like, that's not what we're doing here. This isn't making any changes to the car going down the track or street. It's not preemptively doing anything to make the car go faster. This is just data sensors. You could have a carburetor, you could have a banana duct taped to the top of your intake, and if you can still have data. Doesn't matter if you got fuel injection or carburetors or old car, new car, or whatever. This is all stuff that I've put on the car myself to give me more things to look at during the run, to look at after the run, so that I can make these decisions. So all my decisions are made, but as you can see, I'm still making the changes. We're going over them together. I'm raising the launch RPM, moving the shifts out, turning on dumps, turning off dumps. I'm changing tire pressure. I'm doing all that. I'm moving 4 links when I get back to the shop. Doing all that based on these sensors that I put on the car that I look at after the run. It's the same as when you get back from your run at the track and you say, it fell over a little bit before the shift because you felt it. You felt it in the car. It fell over a little bit. So you're going to change the shift chip or whatever in the MSD. Or if it wheelied too much, I'm gonna tighten the front shocks. These are things that you feel or notice from you either felt it in the car or you noticed it after the fact, watching a video or whatever, picture, somebody told you, whatever it was. This is the same thing. This is just a whole lot of friends telling me very, very reliable information on my run is basically what this is. But I'm still making the changes over here. So, for those of you who say, well, it's all traction control, just because you got a laptop, you got traction control. Well, I can turn the timing on and you can see, if I can make it a bright color, you can see here. Ooh, that purple was good, wasn't it? Yeah, this is my ignition timing during the run. So for anybody who says we're running traction control, blah, 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 it's clearly not. Anybody who knows what traction control looks like, this is not a traction control type timing graph. So when I let off the trans brake, it goes into the main map, which is like 28, 30 degrees. And then this is all me in my launch retard here. This is all me. And then stepping it down to try and catch the tire. That's all me. And then out here, I've got a shift retard. So this is, let me turn this drive shift off. So this right here is my shift retard. So basically it says, I don't want it to spin the tire on the shift. So I'm going to have it pull 2 degrees out or whatever for the shift and then ramp it back in slow. And I'm going to do it again here. But I have to do all that. I have to make all those changes. Like I have to build those maps and make those changes and tell it what time to pull the timing out. So it's not like this is changing anything on the run for me. It's just, it's helping me to look at things after the run and know reliable information on the run. When I was talking about the timing drops and all that, that's these numbers here, how far down it's dropping, how much timing it's taking out. This car makes a lot of power, so it takes a lot of timing out. By the end of the run, you can kind of see my timing line's pretty much the same every pass except for this. I will change this little stutter step here to try and get it to catch the tire, and then the shift points will change the shift timing, but that's about it. So what else? Oh, and boost. It's not changing boost on the run, as you can see from this line right here. Like boost is about as smooth as you can make one, you know. So I leave the boost pretty flat for about 0.8, and then I start to bring it in gradually. Once I get a better hold of the car in the 4-link, I'll bring this in a little faster and flatten it out. But for now, I'm just basically staying linear. The computer is not doing anything to change boost or timing on the run. There are those things. You can do those things, but that's not what we're doing here. We're just looking at data and going over what these 5 decisions or changes are what we like to change in between rounds. Anything else, it gets too crazy. You don't have enough time to do it. Here's where my brain starts to, act weird, and because I don't, it's just the way it is. I don't know. It's the way it is. I don't know how to explain it, but if you tune cars, you'll get it. We were at 9.3 psi on the tire the first run. The second run, we went down to 9.1 psi. There wasn't anything about the second run that made me think that the tire pressure changed the run at all, good or bad. But the first run, I thought, needed less tire pressure. So we went down from 9.3 to 9.1. The last run, because the second run was slower, for whatever reason, this is the way we do it. The last run, we split the difference. So if it was at 9.3 the first one and 9.1 the second one, that third one, we're going 9.2, whether we like it or not. It's just what our brains do. So we split the difference. So the tire is now at 9.2 psi. Not that it's going to make a lick of difference. This is the third run. So you can see we still have the oscillation, but it went further without spinning the tire at all. And if you watch the video, in the first pass, it don't look like it spun the tire at all. It looked like it was so slow, the tire never spun. But if you look at the data, it shows you the first pass, it definitely spun the tire as it got out there and oscillated. So, but as you can see on this one, it made it further. RPM at a quarter second is basically 250, 247, 250. And RPM at a half is now over at this 1,057. So there's the magic. That's where the ET comes from. First run, RPM was at 110 and a quarter second. Drive shaft RPM was 800 and a half a second. Second run, RPM at a quarter was like 140, so 137 and 140. But then it was too high at 1200 RPM at a half. But the G meter was slower. So that 1200 at a half is spinning. That 140 at a quarter is not enough. So now if you look, we gained RPM at a quarter. We're at 250-ish basically at a quarter. So we finally picked that up. That's what we were trying to do. We couldn't do it the second pass. We did it the third pass. We picked up the quarter second drive shaft. The half second drive shaft is still a little high, but the quarter second's still a little low. You know what I mean? So if we can get the quarter second to keep coming up and bringing the half second down, that's where all the ET is. The 4-link change, honestly, we could leave the tune-up alone. Just change the 4-link and the shock and go back out there, and it would probably fly. And we could turn the dump back off. But dealing with our bullshit, dealing with the way we left the shop, we're having to band-aid this in order to get more progress and more data. And we did. So we learned a lot about the shifts. We learned a lot about the boost. We learned a lot about the burning. And we're learning more about everything on the car with this tire every lick. So, and as you can see here, the half-second number came down, quarter-second number came up, and ET dropped. We picked up almost a tenth and a half in the 60-foot on the last run. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. Then after that, it still has the oscillation. You can see it. It still has the oscillation. It's still there. And then it tries to go fast here. It looks like it spun a little bit here, but then it's fast again. It's fast here. Shifts look better. RPM looks way better. I mean, if you look at the RPM line, it looks way better than it did the last one. And if you look at the G meter, it's up higher. It's still got this rollover, this nasty rollover here that kind of kills it, and then it's still a little ugly out here, but I mean, it's better. That's what the main thing is. It's better. And if you look at this one though, now all of a sudden, because it's smoother out here, Now you can really see the G meter. You can really do some tuning if you knew what you were doing here, because right after the 1-2 shift, if you just turn on, you know, these three channels, nothing else, no shocks, no 4-link, no, you know, don't turn on anything else, just this, no boost, no nothing, no, not even timing, just turn on RPM, G meter, and drive shaft, and you can see, put your line where you see something different. Okay, so we put it right here because for whatever reason the G meter drops off, tanks right here, just in the dirt. Why does that happen? Well, if you put your line right before it, you'll see it shifted. Okay, so the G meter kind of fell off after the first pass because it shifted, so we run the shift out a little further. But now we're in a different territory. Now it's doing the same thing. G meter's falling, but it's not because we're running it out too far. The drive shaft spikes up. So now it's spun on the shift. So now we've ran the 1-2 out to its limit. If we were not going to change anything in the first second and a half, we'd pull the 1-2 shift back. If we had to go in the other lane or go into a different road, we'd pull the 1-2 back. If we were allowed to make another pass in this lane right now, and we were able to add power in the first second, we wouldn't touch the 1-2 shift, because if you're going faster here, then you don't have to pick up as much with the shift, so it's not going to try and bring the drive shaft up so high. So it'd make it through there and it'd still be fast. But if you're making the same pass again, you'd want to bring that shift back and get rid of that spike, or figure out a way to pull a bunch of timing on the 1-2. But that's kind of hard. But if you look at the converter charge pressure, so you can see right off the button, started to come up, and then boom, I opened it, then I closed it, and so I basically got rid of this whole spike in converter charge pressure just to kind of try and calm the tire down through there. It stayed calm, and the RPM looks good, and then it just, you know, it went down through there. And you can still see the oscillation, you can still see it in the G meter, you can still see it in the converter charge pressure, but if you watch the video, you can't see it as much as you could the first or second pass for sure. That's kind of why this matters so much to me, you know, and how you go faster every run. Now, what I'd like to do is make a 4-link change, make a shock change, because I think that taking the weight out of the back has affected everything. So, and then if I can get the car to transfer the weight back, go and do what it's supposed to do, and be smoother through this first second, it'll pick up another, who knows, it picked up a 1/10.5 just on that last one in the 60 foot. We also have to figure out that it kind of went right. You know, normally when you put more power in something, they kind of go left. So the more power you put in it, the harder it wants to go left. For some reason, this one went right. So in my opinion, what's going on here is it has too much preload on the driver's rear tire, what we call negative preload. It has too much staggered preload on the driver's rear tire. So if there's any, and if the tires were hooked up, I wouldn't even notice it. You know, it would just look straight. But the fact that it bounces and tries to spin the tire right here, that's when, if there's too much preload on this, it's going to kick the car. And as it rolls out there, this tire's now got more traction than this one, and it's going to try and outrun this tire because it has more traction. So it's going to drive around it, and it's going to take the car over that way. Luckily, it only went right to about the white line, and then started the oscillation stuff, which kind of calmed, you know, it didn't calm the car because oscillation isn't calming, but it took a lot of that trying to go right out of it. It just kind of started spinning the tire. You had to take the traction away, which took the leverage away. You know, if you take the traction and the power away, they'll go straight, no matter what the 4-link is. That helped us get down through there, and then, you know, the rest of the run, the front tires are on the ground completely. I'm able to drive the rest of the run, no big deal. And there's a lot of ET left, and then we haven't even got into, you know, the millions of other ways to go fast with tire pressure and shock changes and air fuel. You know, there's a lot of ways to go fast, but just the basics of what I do is drive shaft speed, G meter, RPM, you know, trying to start the run happy in the first half. So if you can start the run happy, you can usually put more power to it through the middle and out the back. It's strange because these numbers that I ended up at, believe it or not, if I took these numbers, this 4,000 RPM two-step, basically 187 or 2 second shift point at 6,500, 2.3 at 7,500 basically, dump at 30% for 0.5. If I took those numbers right there and wrote them right here, and then I took whatever was in Jackie's last pass at that same road and put them right here, they would be identical. Even though she runs a nitrous small block Chevy with carburetors on it, and the mid plate's 1,000,000 miles long, and it's 3,100, 3,200 pounds, and then you got my car whose mid plate's 20 inches further back, 400 or 500 pounds lighter, twin turbo on methanol. You know, like, even though all those things are different, our first gear ratios are really close, our rear gear ratios are really close, and we tune the drive shaft. You know, the combo, if the drive shaft isn't happy, it's not, there's going to be a number on just about every tire. That's the other big secret to this, is like, you'll learn. It doesn't really matter so much the combo as it does the tire. On the tire and the surface, there's going to be a certain number at 1.25 and 1 3/4, whatever, a certain drive shaft RPM number with the highest G meter that's going to be the fastest down that road, period. However you get to that is how you get to it. But those are the numbers you're searching for when you're baselining a tune-up or baselining a new car, new combo, any major changes. You're just trying to figure out what the numbers are that the drive shaft wants to be at 1.25 and 3/4, and then how to get those numbers and make the G meter up as high as you can get it while achieving those numbers. Because if the G meter's down and the drive shaft numbers are where you want them, it's spinning the tire, it's not going fast. If the drive shaft's down, you know, G meter's up, it's still not fast. So you got to get them both up. If you can get them both up, it's fast. And it's smooth. And then you can apply power the rest of the run. I tune drive shaft, time over distance, G meter. That's the main things to go fast, in my opinion. Next video, we'll get into some more, you know, maybe into some more different stuff. Let us know what you want, what you didn't understand. I know I talk stupid sometimes. Let me know what you didn't understand. Let me know what you want to see more of. Let me know what you think. Let me know if I'm wrong. You know what I mean? Hell, I don't know. You know, you might look at this and go, hey, man, you know, that drive shaft needs to be this or whatever. Just whatever it is, let us know so that we can make sure that the next one, if we do a next one, if you want us to do a next one, it'd be more in depth on what you want to hear about or what you want to talk about. If you want to talk about nitrous cars, then we can pull up data from her car. If you want to talk about shocks or whatever, we have shock data from both cars. You know, whatever your questions are, 4-link shocks, converters, you know, whatever. Let us know. We will do our best to help you out. With that being said, I'm going to go back to doing. I'm going to get rid of all these bullshit data logs that I pulled up just for you guys that weren't actually the runs that I just made. I'm just joking. And I think you can tell they're definitely the runs I just made. But, and I'm going to go back to work. So, well, bye.